Let's get started. Welcome everyone to another edition of What Keeps You Up at Night? Entrepreneurship during challenging times. I am one of your three co-hosts, Colin Weston. I am the community leader for Startup Vancouver, which is one of over 40 chapters of Startup Canada across the country. And as the sign says, our reason to be is to connect you, entrepreneurs and innovators, to all the resources, other people and events and tools to both locally, regionally, and nationally to increase your ability to succeed as an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurship is tough, as we know, so we also want to make sure that connectivity, that we're in this together and we're here to support each other, which we used to do. Remember back in the day, pre-COVID, when we actually used to meet in a space as a bunch of people less than 6 feet apart? Crazy, remember those days? We used to do those type of events, but of course now we've pivoted and recalibrated to do online events, with What Keeps You Up at Night being one of them. As Reza mentioned already, this is episode 26. Hard to believe we're already there, but we just keep on rolling here. So when we rebooted last week, after taking a month off, we changed our format a little bit. So now we're once a week on Tuesdays from noon till 1. Where before that, of course, we were for a half-hour show twice a week. And I think Reza and Maryam, we've talked about it. We kind of like this format, and we've got really good feedback on it. And we've got 3 fabulous guests rather than 2 on the Tuesday and 2 on the Thursday. So hang in there for a sec. I'm going to share my screen here to do some community announcements before we launch into our conversations with our guests here today. All right. Reza, you'll have to tell me again, buddy, because I got 2 screens going here and it's a little confusing. I'm assuming I've got everybody up there. Okay, so yes, today our guests are Leah Koss, who is the founder and CEO of BBK, oh gosh, I had it, Leah. Help me out here, Leah.
There's 2 of them. So it's BBK Network and Build a Biz Kids.
Build a Biz Kid. I can't believe that. We've talked about it so much and I stumbled. I'm so embarrassed. Build a Biz Kid Network. I'm going to talk to her about that. And we've got Kathleen Reed, good friend of ours, is the founder of Switchboard Public Relations, and also Chad Lehman, who's the Director of Innovation with Neil Squire Society. So with that, we're going to start off, as we always do here, taking the temperature of the room and for all of our guests and even our hosts and everybody out there and all the attendees out there, both on Zoom and also Facebook Live today. Thank you for joining us and taking the time. We really appreciate it. We know you've got 1,000 other things you can be doing right now, and you chose to be here with us, and we do appreciate that. So this is our way of saying, how are you hanging in there? How's everybody doing? We hope that you're managing to stay safe and stay active and stay engaged, as it seems, as was predicted, that a second wave of COVID seems to be ramping up here a little bit. So yes, everybody, please take care of yourselves, be respectful for others, and we will manage to get through this thing. And hopefully the hour we spend here together is just a bit of inspiration and a bit of levity. Also, we like to keep it light here so that we can get through this thing together. So Startup Vancouver, as I mentioned, the best way to connect with us is through social media. That's where we're very active, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also on LinkedIn, we've got a community page there, and also on YouTube. So every episode we record here, we do post them afterwards. So hey, if you enjoy what you see here today, we've got 25 other episodes, as Reza alluded to earlier, that you can go back and watch with our other amazing, diverse, compelling guests. And hey, while you're there, sounds like a cliche that every YouTuber says it, but please subscribe to the channel. If you like what you see, add a comment, click on that like button. The more people we get subscribing, the more value we add for you, and the more we can keep going here to make this thing sustainable. So we love to make this an interactive and engaging hour of conversation. So after we speak with each guest, we do open it up to our audience and our attendees. So if you have any questions, put it in chat or Q&A on Zoom, also on Facebook Live. If you're with us there, just put it in the comments. We'll be following and we'll ask your questions there or any comments you have. Other thing I want to mention too, and this is happening on Thursday, so the Canadian Export Challenge, which is called CXC 2020. This has been going on for a couple of years. I've been involved with Startup Vancouver and Startup Canada. We're doing a virtual event, of course, this year. It's been going all week long, and on Thursday, it is the British Columbia and the North edition of that. So between pitch competition, thought leadership, panel discussions on how you can scale your business globally. 99.9% of 99.5%, sorry, of the world's population is not in Canada. So in order to really scale your business, that is what this event is all about, as far as giving you the tools and also introductions to people that can help make that happen. So you can still sign up for that. It's a free event. I'll be there, and I hope you'll be there too. Also, our good friends at Vancouver Startup Week. I know it gets confusing. We're Startup Vancouver, Vancouver Startup Week. I get it all the time. It's like, aren't you the same people? It's like, no, but we love them. They love us. It's all about collaboration. It happens this year virtually also, September 25th to October 1st. Our September 29th show on the Tuesday will be in collaboration with them. So please attend, and more details to come on that. We are very proud to have as our charity partner Jack.org. And Jack.org is Canada's only charity that trains and empowers young leaders to revolutionize mental health in every province and territory. And some people have signed up today, so I will be doing my musical shout out at the end. And so far we've raised over $500 for them, and that continues to grow. And like I said, we are very proud and grateful that we have the opportunity to support all the good work they do. My co-hosts, if you've seen them before, Maryam Mobini, CEO of To Resonate, and Reza V, founder of Ovu. So they are going to be speaking to guests today, as I will also. And those guests will be at the very end. I'm going to do this backwards. So I'm going to be talking to Leah and about the BBK network and Build a Biz Kids. There, got it right. I'm 1 for 2. Go me. All right. So we're going to be talking at the end of the show. In the middle, Kathleen Reed, as I mentioned, who is the founder of Switchboard PR, and they're doing some excellent things. I've had a chance to work with them also. In fact, I'm on a call this afternoon to actually work on some other stuff outside of Startup Vancouver. Love what they're doing. Love the work that Kathleen does. So Rez will be speaking with her. And then to start us off, we have with Neil Squire Society, the Director of Innovation, we have Chad Lehman who will be joining us today. And that will be the first conversation we are having right now. And on that note, I will stop sharing and I will hand it over to Maryam to have a conversation with Chad. Maryam, go ahead.
Thanks, Colin. Chad, welcome. So excited to have you here. I remember last time that I saw you, that was back in 2017 at the hangar at CDM, doing an Arduino workshop for students who gathered, engineering students from, I believe, UBC and other schools to work on lip sync. So for those of us who don't know about, Neil Squire Society and how Makers Making Change came about, can you tell us a little bit about it? And I am just so fascinated by the growth that you had. So please tell us more.
Sure. Thanks so much, Maryam. Yeah, Neil Squire Society is a Canadian charity, registered nonprofit. We have offices across Canada. The Burnaby area is our corporate headquarters, though many of us, our office kind of now looks a little bit more like this these days. But we offer a number of programs really targeted at helping people with disabilities. We're not a disability-specific organization. We serve people sort of across the spectrum of different disabilities. I'd say our real focus, our superpowers in the serving people with physical disabilities. And our programming has a wide range. We kind of fall into sort of 4 major buckets. One is helping people with disabilities find employment. Work with job coach developers, get people back into the workforce or back into school, and provide support and structure around that. We do a lot of work around assistive technology for the government of BC. We help implement a program called Work BC Assistive Technology Services. So if anyone, entrepreneur, dedicated volunteer, or an employee has some barrier, health issues, and may need some accommodations to fulfill the duties of their work, we can help provide those assessments and enter a cost sharing agreement to help with that. And that can be a wide range of things. That could be things from, high-level quadriplegics and these very custom setups, to people like, I'm getting repetitive strain on my shoulder sitting at my kitchen table over this pandemic or this time. We've done a lot of, ergonomics in the home. We actually have a webinar coming up in a week about that as well. Another part of the organization is, it's a large organization. We have a staff of 125 now, is around digital literacy. So making sure people with disabilities not only have the tools, but the knowledge to use these pieces. We run free computer tutoring. A lot of it used to be face-to-face, but we've actually been doing that online for over 12 years now. And then where Maryam and I met, kind of go full circle, we have our Makers Making Change. We have an active research and development department. So not only are we helping people find the solutions, but we also have engineers that help build solutions. And under the Makers Making Change, a lot of the assistive devices that we're building, we're now releasing open source, which means you can go to our website, kind of like IKEA, you can kind of get the kits and put the pieces together. We have full bill of materials, so you can buy the things yourself. We have over 100 devices now in our library that are all open source, so they're usually more affordable to build. They can be customized, can be 3D printed, and that's where we really started that work, and where I had the pleasure of meeting you. January 2017, I think, was our first sort of big Makers Making Change kickoff event. It was a 72-hour sort of hack for good, where we had 10 different people. One of them was actually Kevin, who was on the show last week with you guys. He had a very ambitious project. Like, I want to make an off-roading wheelchair. I'm like, I don't think we can do that in a weekend. And I find videos of him like doing wheelies in the parking lot in snow to AC/DC. I'm like, okay, we could probably help you weld a few things. So it was quite a project.
I love it. And I'm just really curious with the COVID and what's going on right now, how are you hosting those build-a-thon? And really curious about how are you getting electronic kits to volunteers?
Yeah, I mean, that first event that we did was a real sort of open access challenge where we had 10 different people with 10 very different challenges, and a group kind of formed around them to work on it. A model we built up a little bit more since then has been, we've had solutions that we know are going to serve hundreds of people. So instead of like fabricating one-offs, like how do we make a whole bunch of these things that they can go to, spinal injury, rehab places, or disability partners. We've had these sort of build-a-thons. We've done over 80 of them now across North America, where typically volunteers will come to the day. Sometimes they're students, we're teaching them how to solder before they build an assistive switch or an adaptive joystick. And some of them are engineers. Like, for example, TELUS has been a huge supporter of our work. They have their days of giving, and my pitch to them is like, you got all these engineers on staff. There's nothing wrong with food bags or taking garbage out of a creek, but you have unique skills, can really solve things that perhaps other volunteers can't. So those used to be a bunch of us in a room. I get there ideally the night before and wire everything up. Sometimes it's early in the morning of, and people kind of come together and they have this sort of community building experience where they're volunteering their time, but it's a little bit of a skill-based philanthropy where people are using their abilities to make these devices. And COVID's really changed that for us. We're not doing these face-to-face sort of events right now, especially as people with disabilities, I would say, are more likely to have underlying health conditions that are going to, make them more susceptible to some of the bad sides of this pandemic. So we worked on doing virtual builds, as we all have now. We've done a couple of them now. We built sort of a playbook on how to run it. So it's additional logistics. Instead of Chad being on a plane and seeing how much stuff he can fit into 50 pounds of space, it's usually shipping things up beforehand, sort of local leaders in that area that can distribute that. And we're starting to see a lot of interest from teachers. There was a webinar I attended the other week, which they called brown bag stamps, the idea of like sort of take home, make it projects.
Yep.
So we're working with that. So we have a few projects coming up. We did a trial run with Homer supporters, Royal Bank, and have a few others in the hoppers and trying to do that. So whether that's small little bubble builds, we've seen sort of micro builds of people like, I got these 8 people in my bubble, we can do that. Or whether that's, people using tools they have or shipping some tools back and forth. So it's added some new logistical pieces. But I guess the silver lining around it is, I can go and I know just enough to get me into trouble quite often with these things. Now I can have on the webinar one of the engineers actually help design the project and say like, oh, you should cut the red wire, and help guide it. So it allows, maybe some expertise I wouldn't have in the room with me to be present in just a different way.
That's really nice to have. And I'm wondering about, I love the redesign of the website, and it's really cool that, you can just, if anyone has a idea for a project, you can just submit it. So how does that whole process goes, and who are the people who are submitting these ideas, and And how fast is it turnaround? What is your process like?
Yeah, great question. So for Makers Making Change specifically, we do have a specific website, makersmakingchange.com. And the idea is there's sort of a repository of projects. If you think sort of like Instructables or Thingiverse, where people can kind of share projects, it's similar to that, but really focused around assistive technology and assistive devices. About half the projects on the site, probably a little less than half now, are from our team. And we're getting more and more where other people have designed things and they're sharing it back to us. So the idea is to create an ecosystem where people can kind of share and publish projects, and our engineers can do some vetting to make sure that sort of meets the needs. Anyone with a disability or a family member, Rehab Center can go to the website and request a project, and we'll pair them with a volunteer, ideally in the community, to work with them on that. But we've also found that there's people that are looking for a solution that perhaps isn't on our website. So we launched a forum earlier in the year where people can sort of share those ideas or design challenges, which is great, because what was happening was it would hit my inbox and I was kind of the roadblock. Everybody emailing this, look for that, and I'm trying to do it. So it allows it to happen in the open. And over the last year, we've been working on building a sort of chapter model, so to kind of help support leaders in the community in supporting people with disabilities. And that looks really different in different communities. Sometimes that's a school, university student group. Sometimes that's been right embedded in a spinal cord injury hospital or rehab center. So, and sometimes you got, like, my ideal chapters are sort of, led by disability people, but have that sort of maker connection. We have a few of those as well. So that's how we've been really sort of working to try and help scale the model and build capacity at the community level. So the way I think of it is, Makers Making Change, the website is an online portal where people can kind of browse, shop, but what we really need is offline action of people fabricating and making things for people in their community.
So what is it that our community can do for Neil Squire Society and Makers Making Change? What is it that could be helpful during this time?
I think there's ways we can all help each other. If you have, a lot of times people like close their eyes, think some disability might be someone like in a wheelchair. But if you have a sore back or some chronic fatigue, I don't consider myself a person with disability, but I have some repetitive strain in my right wrist, right? So it was literally using a different mouse at my desk, and that's made a big difference for me. Similar, I was in a car accident, very minor one, about 10 years ago, but if I'm looking down at a laptop all day, I feel it in my neck. So a simple monitor stand makes the world of difference in my ability to sort of work a full day. So for people in the startup community, I know sometimes you're doing long hours and maybe not the most ergonomic setup. Feel free to reach out and work with some of our experts. A lot of the assessment is covered through government programming, trying to help people get back to work or stay in the workforce. Flip side, if you're looking to give back in the community, Makers Making Change is a great way to sort of volunteer, do something with your hands. I don't know what you guys, but especially in this COVID pandemic, I feel like all I do is write emails and read emails and write emails and emails. And at the end of the day, there's still like another 100 unread emails. So what did I really do? So to build something tangible with your hands, it can be empowering to do that. And I got a couple little show and tell things here.
Yeah, let's see.
Wait a sec. So come back into screen. So some of the projects are simple. Some of them a little bit more complicated. So this is a 3D printed bottle opener for these water bottles. So if you have arthritis or pain in your hands, grabbing those little water bottles can be difficult. Or if you're like me and have 6-year-old twins, opening those drinkable yogurts, they're never getting into them. So, used by my 90-year-old grandmother and my 6-year-old twins, and it just allows someone to kind of put their hands on it, and with a simple sort of squeeze that water ball and twist it open. So simple device. This is maybe $1 worth of plastic off your 3D printer or something that, is sitting in libraries or high schools and kids are printing Yoda heads and phone cases. And here's something that can cheaply and affordably help someone. And it's an open source design. So if, they're drinking that ocean spray juice, they need a bigger piece, they can change the model, edit it, put I love you grandma on the side, whatever, really edit it for their
what I love about your process is that, because you work with people who are going through that, they're facing those challenges, or, you can empathize with them, and you're in the same room together. So you can iterate so quickly. And that's like really what's so powerful about what you're doing,
Yeah, and we're working a lot with students in helping devise this. There's a real focus for in education around sort of STEM learning. Where are the trade skills of the future going to come? So it's an opportunity to learn some of those skills, but have a social impact as well as sort of like technical hard skill development.
Exactly, exactly. I think my colleagues have some questions for you, so I'm just going to open it up and see. Leah?
Yeah, Leah, why don't you open up your mic here rather than us reading your question? Why don't you ask your question there, Leah?
Sure. So, Jen, I love what you're doing, and I love that everything has a purpose. It's not just teaching a concept, but it's actually doing something to solve a needed problem in the world. I was just on the website while you were talking, and I love that people are submitting these challenges for people to then conquer. My question is we have students between 7 and 13. Do you have classes or instructors that teach this kind of design thinking and problem solving along with the actual learning how to construct these things for that kind of age group?
Great timing, and I, would have seeded that question if I could have. Yeah, we just launched in partnership with Autodesk, which does a lot of the sort of 3D designs for modeling pieces, as well as Print Labs curriculum, focused specifically around the sort of design thinking, assistive technology. So Print Labs is sort of a fee-for-service 3D training repository, but they're made the designing assistive technology project freely available, and that's been accessed by tens of thousands of students around the world. And with Autodesk, we've launched just recently, they've called it the Make Able Challenge. That URL I do not have off the top of my head, but I have a funny feeling Reza can Google it quicker than I can, from what I'm seeing going on in the chat here. And so it has some design challenges specifically for students kind of work through it, really focusing on issues with their hands, and has different users from people with tremors to people with different sort of, for example, my boss, Dr. Gary Birch, the C6 quadriplegic, so he can move his arms. He doesn't have the sort of finger dexterity, so pinching that water bottle's hard, or turning a key in a door, or writing a. So he's used a number of solutions, and the one he has is nice and 3D printed. It's got foam and the Neil Square logo in it. But sometimes it's just low-tech solutions. This is an industrial twist tie. We get about 10 of these for $10 at Home Depot, where you can kind of write it around, but some that may have a tough time gripping can write. So I'm really excited to see it. We've seen some other, a lot of my work is usually like, okay, trying to find young engineering students to solve these problems. And in grade 5 class in New Brunswick, we're showing some things they're doing. And it was real, that's sort of like not knowing what isn't possible, what frees their constraints. They came up with some great ideas of stuff for people and their family and whatnot. So it's an exciting chance to kind of get people involved in the community to maybe think about sort of social service, and hopefully seed for in the next sort of generation of innovators and creators that accessibility is an important constraint. About in Canada, it's about 15% of the population identifies as someone with a disability. In the States, it's 1 in 5. So that's a huge market segment. Dr. Birch did a TED Talk actually titled, "Is Your Innovation Disabled?" To think about when you're thinking of the next solution, who are you excluding by how you approach it? So it's a great post startup Vancouver show for your viewing pleasure.
Here we go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, there's other events that we do, especially with our Can Startup Stories, where we focus and showcase different communities within entrepreneurship. So Chad, perhaps we'll have to circle back in a couple months and connect you and all the good things you're doing with Neil Squire Society there to get you involved in that. So before we actually turn it over for our next guest, Kathleen Reed and Reza, we got time for one more quick question, and I believe Kathleen has a question there. I can see you're multitasking and snacking there. I don't know if your mouth is empty now. If so, why don't you open up your mic and ask your question there, Kathleen?
I confess I was eating some potato chips and some lemonade. I'm in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy. I was saying to the group in advance, so I apologize. So my question was around if you've got any mentoring opportunities. I actually have an invisible disability. I'm legally blind and only started telling people about it. I think that was my 2020 goal, was to be honest about my struggles with my eyes and what I can see and what I can't see. So I can't drive and there's things I can't do. But I was wondering, a lot of people who have what I have, you can't get connected to others that might be younger for that. And it was really something that I was diagnosed at the age of 10 with this genetic eye disease. And then when I was 30, found out I couldn't do driving anymore and all of these things. Do you have anything like that, Chad? Because I'd happily, chat with others who might have this, or I think it's always interesting for kids because they're so limitless, but then you're told you can't do these things. Finding workarounds. I find a lot of people with disabilities can find a lot of workarounds in their life. So it's just curious if anything like that existed.
Yeah, I mean, people with disabilities are the sort of, if employers are looking to hire someone that can think outside the box, people with disabilities had to navigate a world that has a bunch of barriers that aren't traditional. So, so we have, we sometimes have opportunities to sort of speak to students sort of about that and kind of introduce a sort of topic, so something they can work with. And then there's some other really good organizations that do that work. Rick Hansen Institute has, I think it's Rick Hansen Foundation, sorry, has an ambassadors program that try to help sort of have people speak with that. A lot of their focus has been more on physical disability for cancer, of course, and with BC Hero, as well as Blind Beginnings, really looking on you. So Kathleen, after the show, let's, I think especially, for youth with different disabilities that are facing things, to know that there's other people that are successful and have stuff, because there's so much like you can't do this, and have those sort of positive role models is hugely important for all youth, and especially youth with disabilities have another set of challenges that they're doing. So seeing people that have had success really can go a long way in this sort of self-confidence and belief in helping them achieve their goals.
Cool. We'll connect after. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, good stuff. In this conversation we're having with you, Chad and Maryam, it's a nice continuation from last week's show, which we were showcasing Accessibility Month in British Columbia, and with Small Business BC spearheading that. So we had a great show last week, so I'm glad we managed to kind of continue that on with the month of September. So, hey, I'm going to turn it over now to Reza, who's now going to have a conversation with Kathleen.
One of the things I love about this show is the type of connections that happen during the show, and the conversation that just it gets sparked by different guests and different attendees. So thank you, Chad. Very inspiring and good stuff. All the links are in the chat below, both in Facebook and here. So definitely connect with him and follow his story. Kathleen, thank you for being here. I met Kathleen at one of the events at actually Start of Vancouver, and I quickly got to know the amazing stuff she's doing. And ever since, I've been following her on Instagram and on LinkedIn. You guys doing amazing stuff. Tell us about Switchboard, and how did you even get into PR?
Great question. Thanks, Reza. So Switchboard, a full service public relations and public affairs firm. We have an office in Vancouver, Canada, and also Calgary, Canada. And we service clients really across North America and around the world, primarily work in the technology and innovation space, whether it's a technology company or a tech-enabled company. One thing that we like to say is, now in 2020, and I think we're seeing this with COVID-19 particularly, you've got to adopt technology in some way for your business to survive and thrive. So it's really exciting. In terms of how I got into PR, I kind of stumbled into it, I have to say, and ended up really enjoying and liking it. I love communicating with people, speaking with people, and building connections. So when I was doing my undergrad at UBC, I started a summer student position at National Public Relations, and it was a big PR firm in Canada. And I just loved what I was doing. And my parents, probably wanted me to go and be a professional, a lawyer, or something that would maybe be better served with my background in poli-sci and econ. And I just kept going, and eventually decided I wanted to start my own thing. I had a great job at a lovely multinational in Vancouver, and I thought, I'm going to jump out of the corporate world and start consulting. And from there, Switchboard was born. So 4.5 years old now. We have a team of 5 full-time employees and a really great group of dedicated consultants that we pull in on a project-by-project basis.
That's amazing. And Kathleen, you and I had a few conversations on different occasions, and I quickly realized one of your biggest strengths are you're keen at finding the right story, like seeing the good stories out there and connecting them with the right media. And you see that better than anybody else I know. Over the COVID period, was there any interesting stories, any interesting projects you guys are working on?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think during COVID and generally when I'm speaking about media relations, media tends to skew to the negative. If an airplane crashes, we're going to hear about it. Airplanes land all the time. We don't hear about it. But I think one thing that media is looking for right now is really stories of human resilience and success. And there's been a lot of these from British Columbia alone. So you're seeing companies like Accelerate, you're seeing companies like Thrive Healthcare you're seeing a lot of work in the Canadian space, particularly from British Columbia. So we have to give ourselves a shout out, making a difference. And I think where you can find some of the stories and place content right now, and when you're pitching media, you have to look at a few things, uniqueness being one of them, but also what's the human interest angle. And whenever we're brainstorming how to pitch something, we think of it as an onion. What layers can we peel back, and can we get deeper and deeper to find the human interest and some of those golden nuggets and connections that happen just through human conversation.
And a lot of times I've seen this mistake done by founders or by business owners, that they are trying to pitch the media about what is it that they're so great about, and they don't really think about how the audience would get value from. And you guys are busy, the media company is busy with, you know, hundreds of emails. How can someone pitch the right idea to the media or to a PR firm and to stand out?
Mm-hmm. I think we've got a lot of resources on our website. So there's a resource page on our website, and there's a lot of webinars that we've done with Vancouver Startup Week, or conversations with Farhan and others who, you know, were in the media. But a few things to look at. One is timing. When are you putting out that request to the media? So think about that. Generally, best practices would be Tuesday to Thursday. Think about what time of day the reporter would be getting that email. And then what can you offer that's unique, different, or a value add? If you're just saying, hey, you know, a lot of distilleries converted to creating hand sanitizer during COVID. If you were the first distillery to do that, okay, you're going to get some media coverage around it. But if you're the 10th distillery to do that, it's not really innovative, it's not new. So think about that. And then what value can you be adding there? And really look at your pitch notes that you're sending out to media. Whenever I speak to friends in the media, if you're spelling their name wrong or sending them a really, really long email, they're not going to have the capacity to read it. Email fatigue is a real thing. So there's lots of things you can do to better pitch your story. And if you're working with a PR firm, they're going to help you massage out that messaging and make sure it aligns with you and can guide you on that process. But we've got a ton of free resources on our website, so please use them.
Nice. And there has been so many things happening that it's hard to even keep up. At the beginning of COVID, when you mentioned email fatigue, a lot of people were like, we ended the email with we hope that you guys are safe and your family is safe. And then we had emails that we are monitoring COVID, and you know, these businesses that were copying all these bigger businesses. Where are we right now? Like, how are we supposed to communicate today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a few things. I think we're looking just from movements that we've seen throughout the summer, really authentic dialogue. You know, we knew that there would be, we're living with COVID-19, right? It's not something that's going away, and scientists and the research community are doing everything they can. So, you know, amazing for them, and government is doing everything they can. I think what we have to think about in messaging and in comms is not over messaging around it, but also being realistic. So putting out timely, accurate information is important. So if you're communicating with your employees about new protocols in your office, that's going to be very important, but also living with it as a bit of a reality. I think there was a bit of a heaviness, some fatigue around COVID-19, and that's the world we're living in right now. So you have to build up, and it's a really interesting time, I think, for organizations, big or small, to think about resilience and your culture and your purpose, and to be having some of those core discussions to make sure you're able to get through this. We don't know what everything is going to look like. You can't predict it. I mean, obviously some people can. And we've got to see what it is. So I think remaining authentic, making sure you're giving timely updates depending on who you're communicating with. And then really going back to your culture and purpose. It's something we did at Switchboard last week with a facilitator, and it was hugely helpful for everyone in our organization, getting back to our purpose and why we're here.
Nice. One comment to add on what you said. The best thing I learned in marketing was that marketing is understanding. So the more you understand your audience, the better you can serve them, the better you understand what they're going through. So you have empathy towards them. And going forward, I feel like the businesses who think few months in advance are ahead of the game instead of catching up, thinking about, okay, Christmas time are coming around. This is the first Christmas that we are going through different types of time. A lot of families are apart. A lot of FaceTime and Zoom calls are happening. So your marketing message, your media message has to cater towards that. And then what if the vaccine comes out and then we're slowly going back to some of these smaller events that we're trying to go back to semi-normal? What's our message there? Like, how are we preparing for that? Kathleen, what's your advice towards 2021? Let's say we are on recovery mode. How are we going to adjust towards that?
Yeah, so I think anytime you're doing strong communications efforts, you want to be proactive, not responsive. So being a few steps ahead of your stakeholders, depending who they are. I think one thing that really matters right now is listening. Listening always matters. It's the most important thing in communications, but can you create that where you're really having safe places to have open dialogue, and whether it's your customers, everyone wants to feel seen and heard. It's the best thing, right? When you know someone's really, really listening to you, Reza, it feels good, and that's what your stakeholders want in communications. I think when you're forward thinking in 2021 and, you know, no crystal ball, everything's good, you're going to want to continue some of that. Some of the narratives around safety and home, you're not going to see returns and shifts right away. Not everyone's going to feel like they can jump on a plane. So you're going to have to communicate with those groups. And there's different industry reports that come out that kind of offer some insights around this. But I think the best thing to do is have a game plan, but know that you might need to shift it and really continue to be true to your purpose as an organization and communicate that, and look at that and kind of have that as your north and your compass guiding you. If you're guided by purpose, I think you can't go wrong, and you've got to know what that is, and everyone on your team should know what that is, and you're then able to communicate that to your various stakeholders. I do say there's really no cookie cutter approach to communications because it depends on who your stakeholders are and what you're hoping to do. So hopefully that helps answer it.
And exactly, and it comes more authentic when you're communicating based on your values and your culture. And the bigger the team, the more often you have to go through those, I guess. And also during COVID, we've seen so many divide between how people are thinking. So it's really important you understand where you stand, because easily people can pull you to one side or the other. Some people are against shutting down. Some people are for shutting down. There's so many different opinions, and you can get lost very quickly, and your message doesn't come authentic anymore. I've got to wrap it up. Kathleen, tell us what keeps you up at night.
Well, I guess becoming a new mom. So I'm expecting my first baby with my husband in November. So obviously that keeps me up at night. Mat leave planning as a small business owner in Canada is difficult. We want to see women in business, but we don't have mat leave benefits. I'm sure there's grants, but any small business owner knows you've got a laundry list of things that keep you up at night. So I have not explored those grants. I probably should have. We've brought in an awesome director of PR who's going to help me keep things going. And I'll be taking my 6 weeks off, but after that, I will be back with a little baby and hopefully some form of normality in work life. But that's one that's been really interesting for me, navigating what a maternity leave looks like as a small business owner in Canada. And I've had a lot of really eye-opening opportunities from it. So probably more to come on that front in 2021.
First of all, congratulations. And secondly, it's very impressive how you're pushing forward regardless. You're out there. And definitely, guys, connect with Kathleen. She's an amazing person to meet and to have as a connection. I let people start asking questions before we move on.
Yeah, we'll open it up. We'll say both on Zoom here in the chat and also on Facebook Live. In comments, I have put the links to both Switchboard PR and also on LinkedIn for Kathleen. So if you want to connect with her, you better do it quick, because after mid-November, she's going to be a little bit busy. So she won't be talking to you for a little bit of time. So now is the time. So I don't have any questions in chat on either Facebook or Zoom.
I think Leah has a question.
A little shy here today. So yeah, I want to open it up to either.
Go ahead, Leah.
Anybody else here? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, PR is such a big thing for us. We have so many stories and so much happening that I'm definitely going to be going onto your website. I'm actually already on it, looking at your resources and stuff. But I'd love to connect, because that's an area that I think we haven't been doing enough of. And I think it's often the thing that people feel should be easier than it actually is. It's an art. And so, yeah, I would love to connect with you after this.
Leah, you stole my line. I always say media relations, it's an art, not a science. There's not one little algorithm we can use for it. So happy to connect I'll dump my contact information in the chat too. So if anyone has questions and they're too scared to ask right now, feel free to send me an email.
Awesome. With that, I'll hand it to you, Colin.
Oops, helps
You're
when
on mute.
helps when mood. What a rookie. Boo. Maryam, I saw that you were very engaged. Did you have a question with Kathleen before Leah and I have a conversation?
I'm just always so curious about process, and also there is so much myth and dismantling, misinformation, myths that's happening. Wondering what is your process with companies that are coming to you and they're dealing with, trying to change their audience point of view of now there's this like maybe a disaster, that there's this myth going on about their organization. What is your process to change their messaging?
Yeah, one thing that we have to really do there is listen to what's being said, and we often will do an audit of that, look at what the tone and sentiment is, where that's coming from, are there some outliers, what does their community and stakeholder map look like? That's a good way to start. And then where can we shift and present some of that accurate information? And sometimes you don't need to engage with inaccurate information. Hopefully, we see this maybe in the US election where you just don't engage and you can go out proactively with your messaging. And I think you've got to know in times that are full of change that you're going to get some people that are just going to disagree with any messaging that you put out there and accept that. I think one of the biggest things in communications is to not defend, because whenever you defend, you're just starting that. I like to say defense is the first act of war, right? You're really just kind of moving in that direction. So it's okay to put your proactive messaging out there, but there's lots of tools you can do to get there. And misinformation exists, so it's putting out your sources and your facts. And I know we on social the other day said, well, here's the fact on it, and we just answered that way. So giving the correct information can be valuable instead of getting into a debate and dialogue.
Yeah, I noticed that during COVID, there were companies that unfortunately didn't handle it well, and they said things, and there was this whole, cancel culture and that, discussion around that, and just coming back from it, and even they would apologize and everything. It just has been, really difficult, and so I was just really curious how you guys go about helping those.
I think the other thing is to take your time. To not rush your messaging, you don't need to, there is urgency, of course, and we live in this 24-minute news cycle, but you can take some time with your messaging before you get it out there. And there's been, during the summer, you've probably seen a few companies who haven't done it right, and I think they just were really reactive instead of proactive, and they probably could have pressed the whole button for one day. It wouldn't have been the end of the world.
Yeah.
They would have less issues to manage. So some of it's timing.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Welcome.
And Kathleen, thank you for that engaging and informative conversation there. I always learn something from both of you, and I've done it again. So I appreciate that, and hopefully our attendees, our guests today feel the same way. I do notice in comments here, I see Michael, one of our most regular and devoted attendees of our show here, has just posted a comment. So he's with you on this one, Kathleen. He says, 100% agree on the defensive approach being tangential, off in the wrong direction. So there you go. Good stuff. So sometimes the best offense is offense. Is that a thing? Maybe. Don't know. So moving on from that, so our final guest of the show is my good friend Leah Koss. And I've known Leah for a couple years now. She's been very supportive of Startup Vancouver. We've attended lots of events together. She's been there for Van Startup Stories, and also back when we used to do Van Startup Drinks. Hopefully we do that again in 2021. We love that event.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and I have to say, I followed your entrepreneurial journey where you were doing things that were more of a side hustle, and I'm taking it now with Build a Biz Kids and BBK Network, that this is a full-time gig for you now. So Leah, to start us off, perhaps you can kind of encapsulate what you do with Build a Biz Kids and how that is now expanded into the BBK Network.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so this definitely was all by accident, that's for sure. It's one of those things where you stumble on your passion because it keeps you up at night, realizing that something needs to be done that's different. And I think for myself and many who hear, sorry, I've got a train going by right now, if you can hear that. We kind of look at our own lives and we project, going, the world shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't be this way, you know, and that's how I really looked at the education system. What we ultimately are teaching kids is, if COVID has taught us anything, the world is changing and exponentially faster and faster, and the education system, for better or worse, is not keeping up. It has many good things, but there's a lot more that kids need to be learning at a younger age. And the problem is they're all things that you can't really test for on an exam. These are things that are deemed in the world as soft skills. It's a terrible word. We call them essential soft skills to make them sound a little bit more important and less soft. But essentially, these are the things like teamwork, collaboration, decision-making, persuasion, adaptability, critical thinking and problem solving, like what Chad is encouraging with his organizations. It's so important because if we teach kids just technical skills, whatever we teach them today, you know, a lot of parents are putting their kids in coding, for example, but it is 100% chance that whatever you teach your kids today as a technical skill, it'll be obsolete by the time they graduate high school. There's been over 250 coding languages since coding was a thing, just to give some perspective. So where my passion comes from is going, if we're gonna have kids in school for 12 years, what are those fundamental things that they need to learn that will last them for the next 40 to 50 years of their life? And then let's do that in a way that's really relevant, hands-on, tangible, that the kid's gonna really have a lot of fun doing, so that they just perceive that doing fun things that have social impact and feel empowering and fulfilling for them is just a way of life. It's not something that you wait for in the future that we all work towards. So to make a long story really long, Build a Biz Kids is a registered nonprofit. We teach kids essential soft skills, and we happen to use entrepreneurship as that medium. We teach kids as young as 7 to 13 years old how to start and launch their own first business to the general public. These are kids opening up at a mall with strangers coming up to them. Parents are allowed nowhere near their tables, and they have to learn to fend for themselves, make game day decisions, and realize, ooh, my pricing strategy is not so good. Ooh, my elevator pitch is not as good as my friends over here. I'm not selling as much as I would like. That customer just told me my product was stupid. What am I going to do with that? And we're building all these things like resiliency and decision making that kids are just not, in fact, college students aren't even able to make a lot of their own decisions growing up, right? And that is a skill that needs to be flexed. We just happen to use entrepreneurship for that. But whether the kids become entrepreneurs or not, we want them to feel empowered, that they can make choices, they can make new choices, and most importantly, they can take action on those choices and those ideas. And so that's what we did. Everything was in person. But obviously, you know, the next thing that kept me up from at night was COVID hitting, and we couldn't do things the way that we always did them. So. Yeah,
well, we definitely want to expand on that in a minute here. So I want to kind of wind the tape back a little bit, because I'm always fascinated talking to entrepreneurs. So when you started with Build a Biz Kids, obviously you had an aha moment, as all entrepreneurs need to find. Is there a pain point? Is there an opportunity? What was that aha moment? When did you realize, I'm onto something here? We are, as an organization here, that we got some traction, we got some validation, we're creating some buzz, and we're going to go for this. And we're creating something that actually people want. So what was that? Do you have a story that you can tell us from a couple of years ago, that time that you kind of went, okay, I'm all in now, I see that this is really going to hit?
I have like 1,000 stories, because I'll just be like driving and I'll be like, oh my God, like that too, like that's a new reason that I need to be doing this. Like there's just so many of those moments, those aha moments that reinforce why I'm doing what I'm doing. I mean, the right PQ or politically correct answer would be, I have a stepson. He's 11 years old now, but entered my world when he was 9. And, you know, his father looked at this and said, oh, my son, I need to make sure my son is okay for the world. Me, I'm like, yeah, he better be okay with the world, but why the heck wasn't I okay in the world? You know, like I was the kid who, with my stepbrother, we would go to the flea market. We would rent our own table, take the bus there. We would make really crummy crafts and go sell them at the flea market. But not once did anyone ever tell me, wow, that's entrepreneurial. Wow, you could have your own business. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and the epitome of making it, every 80s movie was working your way up the corporate ladder and becoming the CEO. But the CEO was also the dick. He was always the person nobody liked. And so you had this torn feeling of, I need to work up the corporate ladder, but it's never my company. I'm just the CEO, and that's where I want to be. Being a girl, the only role models I had growing up that were entrepreneurial in the slightest was Designing Women and Murphy Brown. I'm really dating myself if people know those. So Designing Women was all about women owning their own design firm, but they never actually talked about business. They just talked about fashion and superficial stuff. And then Murphy Brown was a raging alcoholic with shoulder pads. And I thought, oh, that's how I need to be to make it in this world. So I wasn't super kind when I was younger. But, you know, those were my role models growing up. I didn't actually know that entrepreneurship was a thing until I went to BCIT, which is a college here in the lower mainland of BC. Awesome school. And it was one of the first years that they offered entrepreneurship as an elective. And I took communications because, you know, Kathleen, communications never goes out of style, right? But these entrepreneur kids, we all looked at them and we were like, you don't get it. Like, nobody's going to hire you with an entrepreneurship diploma. Meanwhile, we didn't get it. They weren't trying to get hired. They were trying to make fun damn business. I didn't know that was an option. And so my first job out of college was 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Very gritty entrepreneurial business, all PR oriented, Kathleen. Like, their PR story was amazing, mind blowing. But here I am at 23 years old, selling businesses to people in North Carolina, telling them you should quit your job and move your kids and start your own business. And I'm like looking at these people going, wow, their resumes are pretty like average. I feel like I should be more equipped to run my own business. And so of course I did, but I didn't realize all those soft skills that I needed. Yeah, I'd read every book that I was told to read, the E-Myth, Good to Great, you know, all those ones. And meanwhile, I start my business and crash and burn after 4 years of trying to keep it alive in manufacturing, no less. So that was super high capital injection. But, you know, what if I could have started something at 12 years old and crashed and burned, and then did it again at 15, and then at 17, and failed each time and it not matter? But I've learned a heck of a lot. Like, it cost me more than my college degree failing my business, but I learned a lot more than I did in my college degree. Now, I love BCIT, but, you know, the reality is it's that experience that have to get over those humps that you learn the most in. And it's that journey that I constantly reflect on and go, how is it that kids are still learning the same way that I learned?
Yeah, I love this. You're actually pulling back the curtain of stigma that's attached to entrepreneurship still. I know we've talked many times on the show about, you know, the stigma and the shame and the silence around mental health for entrepreneurs and for young people and for everybody. And entrepreneurship is not unlike that. I remember when I started out with my journey way back as a kid. Like, I lived in suburban Toronto, and we had maple trees on most people's lawns, but there were ones that weren't. So I saw an opportunity as an 8-year-old, without knowing what an entrepreneur was, where the winter before, I picked up maple keys, planted them in my mother's garden, had like these 2-foot tall trees, put some soil in my wagon, pulled them around, and went to every house that didn't have one and sold them, all of them, right? They paid me more money. So I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. And growing up later, and even when I started my journey, kind of make the joke, but kind of serious, that most people think that entrepreneurship means basically because you're unemployable, that it's your last option that you actually do that. So the work that you're doing, I love the fact you're making sure those helicopter parents are pushed out of the way.
You're not allowed anywhere near them.
Nope. And you're doing that, which is awesome. And the fact you are removing that stigma of entrepreneurship as an option, because we can spend hours on the show, and don't get me going about the school system and, you know, as being that third teacher with our environment and creating those environments for collaborative, collective workspaces. And the most high schools and elementary schools do not physically have the capacity or the space or the curriculum to do that. But I won't get on that soapbox and that rant right now, but you've obviously lived that a little bit.
You and me both. We'll have a whole like session just around the school system.
Yeah, so I do want to ask you this here before we open it up for some questions here. Entrepreneurship, again, is all about partnerships and collaboration. So do you work with school boards and schools, or you like, who are the biggest partners that are helping you propel forward right now with BBK Network?
Everyone and everyone is really the short answer, because even our competitors are not competitors. We're so authentic to the mission that anyone who's doing anything is just helping us reach those missions faster so we can move on to the next thing. There's so many things to tackle in this space. So please, like, if you're into this space, let us know. Let's do something together. Let's do it faster, and then move on to the next problem of the world. And when it comes to collaboration, I think our journey through COVID has probably been the biggest indicator of that. So here we are, we're about to have our biggest year yet. We have partnerships with malls and huge events, and we have BBK ambassador kids who have auditioned, and they're so excited because they're gonna be representing us like on location at all these different events. And like, we had so much cool stuff going on. And then COVID smacks in the face, but not a hard smack. At first it was, oh, this will last till June, we'll be back to normal by, summer. And so we canceled our spring programs. In that moment, we thought, okay, how do we want to be remembered? And how can we get through this alive? Right? That was the big thing. And our philosophy is very much, if we can all just do what we do best and give that to our community, and in return be open to receiving to our community the things that they do best and we don't, then we might make it through this alive. And that's exactly what we decided to do. So we created in 10 days, basically when kids were supposed to go back to school, over the course of spring break, we canceled our in-person programs, or postponed them at the time, and we launched something called the BBK Network. The reason we called it the BBK Network is it's online, for one. It's a two-way interactive place for kids to socialize with one another. It's a chance for them to learn practical skills and have healthy screen time, meaning they're actually doing. They're learning how to make a logo. They're learning STEM, coding, yoga and mindfulness, chess, like all kinds of awesome practical skills. But when we looked around, we realized we weren't the only awesome company that educates kids, and they weren't able to pivot online as quickly as we were. And we thought, well, why wouldn't we just do this together? So collectively, we got what we call brand partners: Code Ninjas, Kid Innovative, Strong Healthy Kids, Dow Academy. I'm trying to think of all of our partners, a bunch of them. And we all decided if we can all just donate an hour or two of our time a week, we could leave this open for free for kids to attend and give parents a couple hours a day of sanity, me time, kids education, and a chance to socialize. Because if you are a child who has a single parent and is an only child, you had no contact with anybody during the heart of COVID. And that was worse than them not getting an education. So this gave them a space, and for 2 hours a day, we've now done over 200 hours that we've delivered for free to students. We are now starting to create courses that we're offering for kids as well to be able to dive deeper, but it's essentially like Netflix, but not on demand. Kids just look at the weekly schedule and they go, oh, I want to take the chess class, the coding class, the yoga class, and they can try a sample of everything. And we have something called a forever free membership, which makes sure that we're making this as accessible as possible to those in vulnerable communities. But then for the paid memberships, which is only $25 a month, which gives you unlimited access, 50% of those profits go towards purchasing devices for the kids who are really being left behind through all of this because their household doesn't have any devices, or maybe only one, but the parent needs it for their work. And so that kid is really being left out in the cold. So we're really doing whatever we can to make it as inclusive as possible, but it's growing really fast, and we've got a lot of cool stuff on the go.
Love it, love it. We only have a couple minutes left here, and I still apparently have to sing, so we have to make time for that too. But I love the recurring theme of resilience coming up here again. And on that note, Kathleen, for our last question of the day, you have a resilience-related question for Leah.
Oh, can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, curious, Leah, who's more resilient, the parents or the children that you speak with?
The kids for sure. Just one really quick example, COVID aside, is we had a market day and a kid was selling their stuff, and this kind of grumpy elderly person came up and they just looked at their stuff and grunted. That was it. They were just like, And the kid was like, hi, would you like me to tell you more about she was selling succulents. And she's like, would you like me to tell you more? And they were like, and they just walked away. And she turns around, she's like, they're grumpy. Like kids don't know what to think. They really feed off of our anxieties. And the reason we tell parents to get lost is because they push their anxieties on the kids going, my kid just failed. And I think it's so hard for parents to not just want to do it for them. And yeah, the parents, it's not their fault, but a lot of times it's the parents who are evoking anxieties or coddling their children, but they do it all with the best of intentions. So part of this program is to educate the parents how they can empower their kids to things that they didn't even think a 7-year-old was capable of.
Love it. Love it. All right. We're at the top of the hour here. So we're going to wrap things up here. Chad, Kathleen, Leah, amazing conversations. Leah, your energy is off the charts. I do not need any more caffeine for the rest of the day because I'm there. It's all good. And hopefully that powers me through what I'm about to do here, as I always do. So we do have a donation today to jack.org. And as a thank you to that particular person, I do a little thing that goes like this. Nice donation by you. Jack.org says, thank you. You are awesome, Kathleen Reed. Nice donation by you. There you go. There you go. Hopefully you got your money's worth there, Kathleen. Very quickly, I got to turn it over to Maryam to close the show for today.
Thanks, Colin. Leah, I just absolutely love what you're doing and what everyone's doing. I'm so inspired. We'll get in touch really soon. So thank you so much, Kathleen, Chad, and Leah, and my co-hosts Colin and Reza for being here today. And so catch us next Tuesday at 12 o'clock. Bring your lunch or drink, anything, and just hang out with us. And so we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.